Soldering your Flappy controller. So first step is you may have one long pair of wires like this, really long. If you do, you'll need to cut them in half using the T-Rex stripper at the bottom here. Has a little tooth that does a fabulous job. And this will give you about a 10cm wire, 2 pairs, one for each switch. If you have these nice short ones, which are female on one end and male on the other, you do similar, but instead we make sure we lop off the pointy ones. We don't need the ones with the stabbies. So again, just lop them off, and you'll be left with a 10cm lead with 2 female plugs on one end and 2 ends that need soldering on the other. So I'm going to take 1 and 1, these two, they look good, and get them ready for soldering. We split the ends and spread them apart, then use the wire stripper to take off about 5mm. Not a lot at all, just enough. I'm going to do the same for these, so split them into a pair and then take off 5mm from the end. You can see this red one here is really, really short, which doesn't even matter because it's still plenty long enough. So next step is use a holder or something that is more heat resistant than you to hold the wires where you'll be able to tin them. Grab your soldering iron, bring this in, clean the tip, always clean it, make sure the tip's nice and melty, and then carefully melt some solder onto each of these wires. The wires should go all silvery and nice. So you can see they're both encased in solder now. Clean your soldering iron and put it away. Do the same for the other wires. Clean the soldering iron, add a little bit of solder. Well, it's gone cold. My soldering iron's turned off. That is not going to help. So, lesson number 2, don't turn your soldering iron off. Once it heats up, we'll solder these two, and then we will prepare the pins as well for the switches. So they're nicely covered in solder and ready to go. Next step is turn your attention to the board. Now these switches, you can see on top, this little metal, the actual bit you push, the metal rod, has one end that's far away from the switch and one end that's really close. The far away end lines up with a pin that we do not use. So the pin furthest, the pin that matches this really far away bit, is the one that we will not use. So you can see here on mine, it's the 2 pins closest to the Arduino are unused. The other pins, however, we will use, so again using our grabber to hold everything in place, we'll grab a soldering iron and we will make sure each of those pins we're going to use has a nice bit of solder on it. Once that's done, it's as simple as bringing your wire in. I'm trying to do this without hiding your view. Bring the wire in. I'm still hiding the view. We'll try this. Yeah, bring the wires in. Carefully heat it, and the solder between the two will just flow together, and they will end up together forever, or until you touch them with the soldering iron again. So there's one switch ready to go. Second switch, again, because we've got solder on all the ends already, all we need to do is put it up close and heat the 2 pins. They will join quite happily. Oh, you can't see. There, ta-da! It's beautiful. Well, it's not beautiful, but it is functional. And that is the soldering done for these 2 buttons. You're going to need to wire them up onto the Arduino and program it, but that is the next task.